I didn't waste breath calling Zhou Hao that night. The 8 dishes I'd slaved over for 4 hours sat cold on the dining table, steam long dissipated into the quiet living room. Braised pork knuckle, Zhou Hao's lifelong favorite, sweet and sour fish Lily had begged me to make every year, cola wings for my 7-year-old grandson Tong Tong, 3 vegetable sides, a whole steamed chicken, and a pot of pork rib soup. For bowls, for sets of chopsticks lined up neatly across the tabletop, just like they'd been lined up every December 31st for 9 straight years. The Spring Festival Gala blared loud enough to fill every corner of the apartment, bright upbeat dance music cutting through the heavy silence between me and Zhou Jianya. He sat slouched in his wooden dining chair, fingers rubbing at his chest. His heart flared up every time we waited for Zhou Hao, the doctor warning him repeated stress could trigger a serious attack. Just send one text, Shufan. Ask where they're stuck in traffic. His voice was worn thin, defeated, the same line he'd repeated every New Year's Eve for nearly a decade. I stared at my phone screen, the last message I typed at 3 that afternoon staring back at me. Dinner's ready when we get home? No reply. I tapped the input box, started to type a gentle reminder about the food going cold, then deleted every character one by one, slow and deliberate. 9 years of this exact cycle. I couldn't bring myself to beg again. Traffic can't hold them up for 9 years straight, Lao Zhou. My tone was flat, no anger left. Only bone-deep weariness. We're not waiting anymore. He stared at the empty 3rd and 4th seats at the table, eyes glistening. We'd gone through every excuse Zhou Hao and Li had trotted out over the years, each one thin enough to see through the second it left their mouths. Year 1, Li's pregnancy. Her mother needed constant support. We packed 2 large suitcases of supplements and traveled 40 minutes to their in-laws' apartment for New Year's Eve, sitting as outsiders at their crowded dinner table while Li's mother laughed and swore they'd come to our place the next holiday. I believed her back then, stupidly clinging to the idea family would balance out evenly. Year 2, newborn Tong Tong too fragile to travel in the winter wind. We sent over a thick cash red envelope and a full set of infant winter coats, again staying home alone for the holiday. Year 3, Tong Tong refused to sleep without his maternal grandparents nearby. Year 4, Li's younger brother needed his sister and brother-in-law present for a blind date to save face. Year 5 through 9, a rotating roster of excuses, family reunions, birthday dinners, out-of-town relatives visiting Li's household, every single one prioritized over a single night with Zhou Hao's birth parents. Every single year, Zhou Hao would call late at night, voice soft and apologetic, spouting the identical empty promise. Next year, I swear we'll come spend New Year's Eve with you too, no exceptions. Every single next year arrived, and the promise vanished without a trace. Last year I'd snapped, the weight of 8 years of unmet expectations boiling over mid-phone call. I'd raised my voice, told him his father's heart couldn't handle another year of empty waiting, asked if he even remembered where he'd grown up. Before Zhou Hao could reply, Li snatched the phone from his hand, her sharp tone slicing through my ears like broken glass. Mom, what's your problem? My parents raised me my whole life. I deserve to spend holidays with them. We swing by your place on the 2nd day of Lunar New Year every single year. Isn't that enough? Why do you have to pick fights and make everyone miserable over one dinner? That conversation seared itself into my brain for 12 months. According to Li, I was the petty, unreasonable one for craving one single family reunion dinner on the most important holiday of the year. My own son never defended me, never pushed back on his wife's cruel accusations, just sat silent while she tore into me over the phone. My phone vibrated sharply against the table, yanking me back to the present night. It was a photo from Zhou Hao, sent without a prior word. I held the screen up for Zhou Jianya to see, and the light faded completely from his face the second he laid eyes on the image. Li's family's dining table, piled high with more seafood and meat than I could afford to prepare. Li's parents, her younger brother, Zhou Hao, Li, and my grandson Tong Tong huddled together, grinning wide for the camera, bright red New Year's decorations strung behind their heads. The caption beneath the photo read, "Happy New Year, Mom and Dad. We can't leave here with all the relatives visiting. Next year we'll definitely come stay with you. Another empty next year." I stared at my own son and grandson, glowing with joy in another family's holiday photo, while our own dinner table sat barren, untouched. Zhou Jianya picked up his chopsticks, forced a mouthful of cold pork knuckle, and I watched his eyes fill with tears he tried to hide by staring down at his plate. A sudden, unshakable resolve settled heavy in my chest. No fleeting burst of anger. Quiet, permanent certainty. I long pressed Zhou Hao's message, deleted the photo and text entirely, then turned to my husband, voice steady, no tremor of sadness left. "Lao Zhou, we're not waiting around for him anymore. We're selling this apartment. All $260K we get from the sale will cover our retirement down in Sanya. We'll buy a small coastal place there, live for ourselves for once." Zhou Jianya's chopsticks froze midair, shock written all over his face. He reached out to grab my hand, his palm clammy with anxiety. "This house is our whole life, Shufan. Zhou Hao grew up within these walls. If we sell it, we lose our roots." I squeezed his hand back, firm, unyielding. Roots aren't for concrete walls and old furniture. Roots are the two of us. If this apartment only brings us 9 years of lonely holiday dinners and endless disappointment, it's not a home. It's a cage we've locked ourselves inside for too long. We're moving forward, not clinging to the past that's done nothing but break our hearts. Fireworks burst outside the living room window, brilliant gold light flooding the room, catching the hard, unwavering look in my eyes. There was no turning back after that night. Zhou Jianya tossed and turned in bed all night long, unable to accept my decision to sell our lifelong home. By sunrise on Lunar New Year's Day, dark purple bags hung under his eyes, and he confronted me over the cold leftover dishes I tossed straight into the trash bin, no hesitation whatsoever. He begged me to admit I was only speaking out of temporary heartbreak, that I'd reverse course once my anger faded. But I laid out every dollar we'd poured into Zhou Hao's household over the years, reciting the ledger entries I'd logged meticulously for decades, and slowly, his certainty crumbled. By Lunar New Year's Day afternoon, I texted our pre-vetted real estate agent, scheduling a full property shoot for the following morning. The agent texted back within 10 minutes, estimating a final sale price of exactly 260,000 yuan after buyer negotiations, matching the number I'd quoted to Zhou Jianya the night before. The second major twist loomed unspoken. I hadn't told Zhou Jianya about the separate inheritance property left to me by my late mother, a small second apartment fully under my sole name, or the six-figure savings stashed away separate from our joint bank account. Funds I'd kept hidden as a last resort retirement buffer, never once mentioning it to Zhou Hao or Li Li, knowing they'd immediately beg to drain the entire sum for their own household expenses. That hidden asset pool would become my most devastating piece of leverage weeks later, when Zhou Hao and Li Li traveled all the way to Sanya with a fake lawyer to demand half the apartment sale proceeds. By 2 o'clock on the second day of the Lunar New Year, my phone buzzed with Zhou Hao's incoming call, his tone bright, casual, fully expecting us to be waiting at home with fruit platters and Tong Tong's annual red envelope, just like every year prior. Mom, we're hitting the road now. Should arrive at your place in an hour. You and Dad are home, right? I leaned back against the living room sofa, no trace of softness in my voice. We're out of town traveling, won't be back anytime soon. Silence crackled on the other end of the line for 3 full seconds before Zhou Hao's voice shot up an octave, shocked and irritated. Traveling? You never told us you planned a trip. Where did you two go? Somewhere far away, no need for you to drop by. I already transferred Tong Tong's New Year's money to your WeChat account. You can head back to Li Li's parents' place instead. I hung up before he could fire off another question, then texted the real estate agent confirming the property photo shoot for the next morning, no delays. Zhou Jianya stared at me, nervous, convinced I'd permanently damaged our relationship with our eldest son, but I shook my head, recalling 9 years of unreturned texts and broken holiday promises. If he cared enough about us to feel hurt by this, he would have shown up for one New Year's Eve dinner in 9 years. Mid-chapter hint of second major twist, 720-word marker hit. The real estate team arrived early on Lunar New Year's Day 3, hauling lighting rigs and cameras to document every room of our apartment for listing. Zhou Jianya wandered from wall to wall, reminiscing about every memory tied to the space, the sofa we'd bought for Zhou Hao's wedding, the wall clock he'd damaged with a slingshot as a child, the crib we'd stored in the spare bedroom for Tong Tong's infant visits. I pulled him away from the old mementos, reminding him we weren't abandoning our memories, just freeing ourselves from the endless cycle of waiting for a son who never prioritized us. The property listing went live online that evening, and a young married couple with their parents reached out within 12 hours to schedule a viewing. They loved the layout, offered full cash payment, and after minor back-and-forth haggling, locked in the exact 260,000 yuan sale price the agent had predicted. Signing the official sales contract the next afternoon, Zhou Jianya's hands shook so hard he could barely hold his pen. I gripped his thigh under the table the entire time, studying him through every signature. Once we walked out of the real estate office, a massive weight lifted off my shoulders, a relief I hadn't felt in nearly a decade. When we returned to the empty apartment to pack our belongings, I dug out a rusted storage box from the back of the spare closet, pulling out Zhou Hao's complete childhood photo album, baby photos, elementary school graduation portraits, his university commencement shots, his wedding photo with Li Li front and center on the last page. Zhou Jianya held the wedding photograph for 10 full minutes, voice shaky when he spoke up. Shufin, what if Zhou Hao hates us forever after this? I closed the album, sliding it back into the storage box without hesitation, my mind replaying Li Li screaming at me over the phone last New Year's Eve, Zhou Hao standing silent and letting his wife insult his own mother. If he truly cared about our feelings, he would have sat down to talk to us years ago instead of letting Li Li berate me every time we argued about holidays. Whether he resents us or not doesn't matter anymore. I've spent 9 years prioritizing his happiness above ours, and I'm done sacrificing myself for someone who never reciprocates. That same night, I booked 2 one-way airline tickets to Sanya departing early on Lunar New Year's Day 5, 7 a.m. sharp. Seconds after confirming the flight booking, a bank alert popped up on my phone screen. 260,000 yuan deposited into our joint savings account, the full proceeds from the apartment sale. The long string of zeros on the screen marked the end of 9 years of unrequited maternal sacrifice and the start of a life solely for me and my husband. We packed 2 small rolling suitcases, only grabbing sentimental small trinkets and essential clothing, leaving all heavy furniture for the new apartment owners to dispose of. We locked the front door of the home we lived in for 32 years one last time, locked the gate downstairs, and headed straight for the airport hotel to rest before our early morning flight to Sanya. What I didn't anticipate, the third major plot twist waiting to unfold the second we touched down on Hainan's coastal soil. Zhou Hao and Li Li would show up at our old apartment gate bright and early on Lunar New Year's Day 5, carrying Tong Tong's backpack, ready to collect their usual holiday gifts. only to find their house key would no longer turn in the lock. He'd dial my cell phone within 10 minutes of realizing the door wouldn't open, furious and confused, demanding answers, completely unaware we'd already sold the entire property and fled thousands of miles south to the ocean. I leaned against a hotel balcony railing that morning, salt sea wind brushing against my cheeks, ready to deliver the single sentence that would unravel every false sense of entitlement Joe Howe and Lily had clung to for nearly a decade. The apartment sold for $260K. It's ours to dispose of however we see fit. The phone call would spiral into screaming accusations, Lily snatching the receiver to hurl insults, both of them blind to the decades of financial support and emotional labor we'd poured into their household, blind to the 9 empty New Year's Eves we'd endured alone. And once they realized they couldn't bully us into reversing the sale, they'd hatch a desperate, reckless plan, fly all the way to Sonia with Lily's unlicensed fake lawyer cousin, threaten legal action to seize half the retirement funds, fully convinced we'd cave to their demands out of parental guilt. The warm, salt-thick wind off the South China Sea wrapped around my shoulders as I leaned against the glass balcony railing of our oceanfront hotel room. Zhou Jianya wandered down to the beach 20 minutes prior, snapping photos of the pale gold sand and turquoise waves. A grin stretched across his face I hadn't seen in nearly 10 years. For the first time since Zhou Hao got married, I didn't have a running mental checklist of meals to prep, red envelopes to fill, or excuses to swallow to keep the peace with my daughter-in-law. My phone buzzed violently in the fabric pocket of my linen beach cover-up, the ringtone I'd set for Zhou Hao blaring loud enough to cut through the crash of distant waves. I didn't rush to answer it, already guessing exactly what had triggered his call. We'd left the old apartment at dawn that morning, locked the front door for the new owners, and boarded our flight south without a single text alert to our eldest son. I knew he'd show up bright and early on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year, following his rigid annual routine of stopping by to grab snacks, cash gifts, and leftover holiday food before heading back to Lily's parents' house. I swiped the call accept button, holding the phone loosely to my ear, no trace of softness or hesitation in my voice. Mom, what the hell is going on? The key won't turn in the front door lock. Did you two get the locks replaced without telling me? Zhou Hao's tone cracked with frustrated panic, sharp and ungrateful, like I'd personally sabotaged his holiday errand on purpose. I stared out at the stretch of empty beach below, watching a group of elderly tourists chase the receding tide to collect seashells, and answered slowly, flat, no dramatic flair to my words. We didn't swap the locks. The apartment sold. Closed the deal for 260,000 yuan last week. Your dad and I agreed that money's enough to fund our retirement down here in Sonia. A full minute of dead silence exploded across the phone line after I finished speaking. All I could hear through the speaker was distant traffic noise from the residential street outside our old neighborhood, faint wind rustling tree branches, and Zhou Hao's ragged, shocked breathing. I didn't rush to fill the quiet. I let the reality sink into him, word by word, just like his hollow next year promises had sunk into me for 9 long New Year's Eves. Say that again. I didn't hear you right. His voice came out hoarse, disbelieving, like he expected me to laugh and admit it was a cruel prank to punish him for skipping holiday dinners. The family house is gone. We signed all legal paperwork. The full sale deposit hit our bank account 3 days ago. The property belongs to a young couple now. Cash offer, all transfers finalized. I repeated the statement firmly, no room for him to twist my words into a temporary fit of anger. Are you insane? That's our family home, my childhood house. You can't just sell it without talking to me first. Zhou Hao shouted, volume spiking high enough I had to pull the phone an inch away from my ear. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh, my grip tightening around the balcony metal rail. Talk to you. When have you ever bothered to consult us about your holiday plans for 9 years running? You never checked in to ask if your father's heart pained him waiting for you every New Year's Eve. You never stopped to consider how empty the house felt with just 2 of us sitting at a 4-person dinner table. You took every one of our sacrifices for granted, and now you demand we run every major life decision past you. Each question landed without pause, no space for him to interrupt and spout another weak excuse. The weight of 9 years of unspoken hurt poured out in that single string of accusations, every sentence rooted in tangible, lived disappointment, not fleeting anger. Zhou Hao stammered uselessly for 10 seconds, unable to form a coherent rebuttal, before Lily's shrill voice cut harshly through the receiver, snatching the phone right out of his hand mid-sentence. Mom, what kind of petty, vindictive stun is this? You sell the house out of nowhere to punish us for spending New Year with my folks. You're deliberately ruining our entire year just to get back at me for arguing last holiday? Lily's tone dripped with manufactured victimhood, the same manipulative cadence she'd used every time we clashed over holiday arrangements. I'm not punishing anyone, but I'm stopping myself and your father from wasting the rest of our lives waiting for a son who never prioritizes us. I didn't raise my voice to match her hysteria. Calm only amplified how hollow her outrage sounded. We own the property outright. The deed only bears our 2 names. We hold every legal right to sell it whenever we choose. No outside input required. Lily sputtered, firing off a stream of sharp complaints about unfair treatment, about how the house was supposed to pass down to Zhou Hao someday, about how we'd acted selfishly to abandon our only eldest child. I tuned most of it out, staring out at the calm blue ocean, already mentally mapping out which coastal community we'd tour for a permanent small condo later that afternoon. Save the lectures. The wind's picking up out here. I'm heading back inside. I cut her off mid-rant and ended the call before she could launch another round of verbal attacks. I muted all incoming calls on my phone immediately after, dropping the device onto the hotel balcony's plastic table beside my cold glass of coconut juice. Joe Jania trundled back up to our hotel room 20 minutes later, pockets stuffed full of smooth white seashells he'd collected on the shore, his face dropping the second he spotted my tight, rigid posture leaning against the railing. He set the shells down on the table gently, stepping forward with cautious, worried eyes. Did he take the news badly? He already knew the answer before I spoke, his hands twisting together nervously, a habit he'd picked up every time family conflict flared up over the last decade. Lily screamed through most of the call. Zhou couldn't get a single proper argument out past the shock. I picked at my coconut juice, sipping the sweet, chilled liquid slowly, my shoulders relaxing the longer I stared out at the open sea. They're furious, but that's not my problem anymore. We spent 9 years bending over backward to accommodate their every request, and not once did they bend for us. Jania sank onto the plastic balcony chair beside me, staring down at the stack of seashells he'd gathered, his voice soft with lingering uncertainty. Do you think we went too far? Selling the house without a single heads up, it might break whatever thin bond we still have with him. I turned to face him, placing one hand over his tense, clasped palms, my tone steady and grounded, rooted in every lonely New Year's Eve we'd endured side by side. What bond, Lao Zhou? A bond that only exists when they need cash, or free childcare, or a place to grab free groceries and holiday gifts. When was the last time either of them asked how your heart was holding up through the winter holidays? When was the last time Lily offered to cook us a single meal instead of demanding we cater to her every food preference for 9 straight years? He fell silent, staring at the waves crashing against the shore far below, unable to counter my points. Every word I spoke was undeniable fact, and he couldn't cling to his old-fashioned belief that parents must endlessly tolerate ungrateful children any longer. We spent the rest of the afternoon wandering the coastal boardwalk, sampling fresh grilled seafood from street stalls, renting a cheap electric scooter to ride along the shoreline roads. For hours, we didn't touch our phones at all, ignoring the dozens of missed calls and unread text messages lighting up both our device screens. We ate a whole platter of steamed shrimp and cold mango salad for dinner, Jania sipping a small bottle of local rice wine, laughing as he recounted silly stories from his factory work decades ago, stories he'd never shared back home, always too preoccupied fretting over Zhou Hao's latest demands. That night, we slept soundly for the first time in years, and tossing and turning replaying empty dinner tables, no lying awake worrying whether we'd upset our son by speaking our minds. My mind stayed quiet, untroubled by the chaos Zhou Hao and Li were surely stirring up back in our old neighborhood. The next morning, our hotel room phone buzzed to wake us early, the caller ID displaying Zhou Yu's name, our younger son, the only child who consistently visited us without expecting handouts or favors in return. Jania grabbed the phone first, hitting speakerphone so we could both hear clearly, his expression instantly softening at the sound of our younger boy's voice. Dad, Mom, I just got off a 40-minute call with my brother. He's blowing up my phone nonstop, ranting about you selling the house and fleeing to Sonia, screaming that you two acted recklessly and stole his inheritance. Zhou Yu's tone carried clear frustration, no trace of hesitation to pick sides, a critical detail I hadn't anticipated would surface so quickly. I leaned forward in the bed, filling him in on every single detail of the 9 consecutive lonely New Year's Eves, the photos Zhou Hao sent from Lily's family dinner table, Lily's vicious phone lecture the year prior, and the full ledger of financial support we'd poured into their household over nearly a decade. I didn't sugarcoat a single hurt or disappointment, laying out every broken promise and unacknowledged sacrifice plainly for Zhou Yu to hear. He listened without interruption the entire time, only sighing deeply once I finished recounting everything. I'm so sorry you two suffered through all this alone for 9 years. I work out of town. I visit when I can, but I never fully grasped how one-sided all this caregiving has been. His voice turned firm, resolute, a complete contrast to Zhou Hao's entitled whining. I fully back your choice to sell the house and move down south. You two owe my brother nothing. Every penny you gave him was voluntary kindness, not a legal obligation. He's throwing a tantrum purely because he lost a free asset he thought he was guaranteed. A quiet, heavy relief washed over me listening to my younger son's unwavering support. For the first time since selling the apartment, I didn't carry a flicker of doubt about my decision. Zhou Yu went on to explain that Zhou had begged him to fly down to Sanya and pressure us into splitting the 260,000 yuan sale proceeds evenly between him and his brother, threatening to file a civil lawsuit against us if we refused to hand over half the cash. I tore into him for that nonsense. Told him parents own their own property. No adult son gets to demand a cut just because he spent 9 years ignoring your holiday wishes. I warned him if he actually tries to drag you two into court, I'll cut all contact with him entirely. Zhou Yu's sharp rebuke of his older brother stunned both me and Jania. We'd never expected our younger son to take such an uncompromising stance against Zhou Hao. Before hanging up, Zhou Yu slipped in a critical piece of information that unlocked the chapter's second major plot twist. Zhou Hao and Lily had booked same-day plane tickets to Sonya, bringing Lily's cousin, an unlicensed trainee legal assistant they were falsely calling a professional lawyer, with them to confront us at our hotel room, fully prepared to threaten legal action to seize our retirement money. I set the phone down on the nightstand, glancing over at Jania, who stared at me with wide, alarmed eyes. They're flying all the way here just to argue over the sale money? He ran a hand through his gray hair, shocked at their sheer stubborn greed. Not just argue, they brought a fake lawyer to try and intimidate us into handing over cash. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, reaching into the bottom of our suitcase to pull out the old leather ledger I packed before leaving home, the full written record of every payment, gift, and loan we'd given Zhou Hao and Li Li over the years, complete with dates, amounts, and brief notes for every transaction. If they want to come fight over money, I'll hand them every single receipt and log entry to settle every debt they owe us first. We spend the next 30 minutes sorting through our packed documents, laying out the leather ledger on the hotel room coffee table alongside a thin manila folder holding the handwritten 20,000 yuan loan note Li Li's brother had signed years prior, never repaid. I also pulled out digital printouts of bank transfer records, saved screenshots of Zhou Hao's yearly, next year, holiday promises, and photos of the 9 empty New Year's Eve dinner tables we'd documented year after year, each one a quiet record of our unmet hopes. Jianya paced the small hotel room, glancing repeatedly at the door, still nervous about the inevitable confrontation waiting for us. I sat calmly on the sofa, sorting the papers into neat stacks, my mind running through every line of questioning Li Li and Zhou Hao would likely hurl at us, pre-planning every counterargument rooted in hard, documented evidence instead of raw emotion. Is there any chance we can smooth this over without a screaming fight? Jianya paused mid-pace, voice laced with reluctant hope. I shook my head, tapping the thick leather ledger with one finger. They didn't come here to reconcile. They came here to extort half our retirement savings under the fake threat of a lawsuit. Li Li's cousin barely passed his legal internship exam last year. He has no authority to file any formal civil claims against us. They're relying on us panicking and handing over cash out of parental guilt. I'd already pieced together the full backstory of Li Li's cousin Wang Wei months prior, back when Li Li's mother visited our old apartment and bragged endlessly about her nephew's new law career. She'd spilled every detail of his uncompleted training, his tiny part-time internship at a neighborhood legal aid office, and the fact he'd never once represented a real property dispute case in court. That small bit of casual gossip from years ago would become our most devastating blow during the face-to-face standoff, a secret leverage point I'd kept stored away until the perfect moment to reveal it. 2 hours after Zhou Yu's warning text alert popped up on my phone, a new message arrived directly from Zhou Hao, sent without a single polite greeting, short and demanding. We've landed in Sanya. Send over your hotel name and room number immediately. We brought legal counsel to discuss equitable division of the house sale funds. I read the text aloud to Jianya, then slowly typed our hotel's full name and our exact room number into the reply box, hitting send without hesitation. Jianya's eyes widened in panic when he saw me send the information over without pushback. Why give them our address so easily? We could block them, check into a different hotel entirely to avoid this mess. I folded my hands over the ledger on the table, a calm, resolute glint in my eyes. Running away only lets them keep clinging to their delusion that they're entitled to our money. We'll meet them head on, lay every debt and broken promise out in front of all three of them, and let them face the full weight of everything they've done to us over 9 years. This conversation has been 9 holidays overdue. I set the phone face down on the coffee table, arranging all our documents in a neat, organized stack front and center for when they arrived. The leather ledger sat at the very top, followed by the loan note for Li Li's brother's unpaid debt, bank transfer slips, holiday photo screenshots, and a separate sealed file folder I'd hidden deep in the suitcase, holding legal paperwork from my mother's inherited secondary apartment. The unmentioned hidden asset neither Zhou Hao nor Li Li knew existed, our final, irreversible trump card for the showdown ahead. Jianya sank down onto the sofa beside me, staring at the thick pile of evidence spread across the table, a mix of anxiety and quiet resolve settling over his features. Outside the hotel room window, the sun dipped low over the ocean, painting the sky streaks of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the tense, bitter confrontation waiting to unfold behind our closed hotel door within the hour. A sharp, rapid knock echoed through the thin hotel walls, 3 hard raps against the wood, loud enough to make the table documents ruffle slightly. I stood slowly from the sofa, adjusting my linen-beat shirt, glancing one last time at the full stack of records we'd prepared to dismantle every single one of Zhou Hao and Li Li's greedy, entitled demands. I knew exactly what waited on the other side of that door, a furious son, a venomous daughter-in-law, and a fake lawyer hiding behind a cheap suit and glasses, all 3 convinced they could bully 2 tired parents into surrendering their life savings. What they had no way of knowing was that every single one of their lies, every unpaid debt, every hollow holiday promise, was fully documented and ready to be laid bare for them to confront. The biggest twist of all loomed unspoken, locked away in the sealed file folder on the table, our hidden inherited property and separate 6-figure savings, proof we held more than enough legal and financial power to counter any half-baked lawsuit they threatened to file against us. By the end of this hotel room meeting, every illusion they'd clung to about easy, unearned cash from us would shatter completely. Jianya stepped forward to twist the door handle, pulling the door wide open without hesitation. 3 figures crowded into the narrow hallway, their bodies tight with unmasked hostility. Zhou Hao's jaw was clenched hard, dark circles hanging heavy under his eyes. He'd clearly lost sleep over the house sale, but not out of guilt for 9 lonely New Year's Eves, out of terror of losing unearned wealth. Li Li stood glued to his side, eyes red-rimmed from crying manufactured tears, her arms crossed tight over her chest in a defensive, confrontational posture. Trailing behind them was Wang Wei, Li Li's cousin, dressed in an ill-fitting cheap dark suit, thin wire-rimmed glasses perched awkwardly on his nose, carrying a blank leather folder meant to look like legal documentation. None of them offered a single greeting, no polite nod to Janya or me. Come and take a seat. I gestured flatly at the two-seater sofa across from our coffee table, where the leather ledger, loan note, bank transfer slips, and printed holiday screenshots sat stacked neatly in plain sight. My voice stayed calm. No raised volume, no dramatic theatrics. This was a reckoning, not a screaming match. Zhou Hao dropped onto the sofa first, shoulders rigid. Lily planted herself right beside him. Wang Wei hovered at the edge of the seating space, adjusting his glasses in a transparent attempt to look authoritative. The hotel room air turned thick and suffocating within 10 seconds, tension crackling between every one of us. Mom, Dad, we drove straight from the airport to talk this through civilly. Zhou Hao spoke first, his tone a forced attempt at reasonableness that cracked on the second sentence. Selling the family house without a single discussion was unforgivable. This property was always supposed to pass down to me as the eldest son, and the 260,000 yuan proceeds are rightfully mine to split with my brother Zhou Yu. We brought legal counsel to walk you two through property inheritance law so we can reach a fair division without dragging this into court. Wang Wei pushed himself forward the second Zhou Hao finished speaking, clearing his throat loudly to draw all eyes to him. He rested his blank folder on the table, his lips twisting into a smug, condescending smile. Mr. and Mrs. Zhou, I'm Wang Wei, retained legal representation for Zhou Hao and Li Li. Under civil property statutes, parental residential real estate purchased prior to marriage can be subject to equitable distribution among lineal descendants upon sale. Our clients are demanding 50% of the sale funds, 130,000 yuan, to settle this matter amicably. If you refuse to comply, we will file a formal property rights lawsuit within 72 hours. I stared directly at Wang Wei, letting his hollow legal posturing hang in the quiet room for 3 full beats before I spoke, my tone sharp and unblinking, cutting through his performative arrogance instantly. Wang Wei, you can drop the lawyer act right now. Your full name, your aunt's endless bragging about your internship, the fact you only sat for your bar exam last year and haven't acquired full independent licensing. We know every detail. Every trace of color drained from Wang Wei's face in an instant. He stumbled backward half a step, hands fumbling with the empty folder at his side, his confident demeanor vanishing completely. Li Li's head snapped toward her cousin, pure shock written across her features, unable to process how I'd uncovered his secret. How do you know all that? Li Li blurted out, defensive and panicked. Did you spy on my family behind our backs? Your mother sat in our old living room 2 years ago and recounted every detail of your cousin's big legal career, over tea, bragging to every neighbor within earshot. I didn't need to spy. You and your family broadcast your own business openly when you thought we were just passive, gullible elders. I tilted my chin toward the leather ledger on the table, redirecting the conversation away from the disgraced fake attorney before Li could pivot to another distraction. We can set aside the false legal threats for now. Before we talk about splitting house sale money, we settle every debt you two owe us first. Mid-chapter beat. The ledger unfolded, 9 years of financial sacrifice exposed, 920-word marker, first major emotional reversal for Zhou Hao. I dragged the thick leather ledger across the table, flipping open the front cover to reveal handwritten entries dating back to Zhou Hao and Li Li's wedding 9 years prior. Every entry had a clear date, exact monetary amount, short descriptive note, and cross-reference to bank transfer slips tucked into the back of the book. I read each line aloud slow enough for all 3 of them to absorb, pausing between every major expense to watch their faces pale further and further. Wedding gift cash, 188,000 yuan, separate wedding banquet, and vendor costs nearly 100,000 yuan. We count this as unconditional parental goodwill, no repayment demanded. I flipped the page to the next major entry, my voice steady and unwavering. Down payment for your marital apartment, full 500,000 yuan from our joint life savings, transferred directly to the real estate agency on your wedding anniversary 3 years in. For the first 36 months of your mortgage, we covered 8,000 yuan monthly payments, totaling 288,000 yuan fully deposited from our pension accounts. Lily's fingers dug into the fabric of her pants as I continued reading, her gaze darting anywhere but the ledger pages spread open between us. Childbirth hospital fees, private maternity nurse retainer, 50,000 yuan covered entirely by us. Monthly childcare stipend of 3,000 yuan for Tongtong's formula, diapers, and pediatric visits, paid consistently from his birth until age 3, cumulative total 108,000 yuan. New vehicle down payment gifted to your household, another 100,000 yuan, no repayment requested at the time. I turned to the final critical entry, tapping the handwritten loan note clipped to the ledger's back cover, a signature scrawled across the bottom belonging to Li Li's younger brother Wang Chong. 3 years ago, your brother borrowed 200,000 yuan to fund his failed retail business venture, signed a formal loan document promising full repayment within 12 months. To this day, not a single cent has been returned to our accounts. I paused, tallying the numbers out loud for them to hear, no room for argument or misremembered figures. Excluding wedding and banquet costs we wrote off as a gift, the total sum you two and your immediate family owe us adds up to 1,246,000 yuan. Every transfer has matching bank slips printed here for verification. Dead silence swallowed the hotel room. Wang Wei shrank back against the wall, no longer daring to interject with fake legal jargon. Zhou Hao's head hung low, his cheeks burning bright red with overwhelming shame, unable to meet my eyes for even a second. Lily's mouth opened and closed repeatedly like a fish gasping for air, scrambling to manufacture a weak rebuttal to erase the weight of the debt laid out before her. All of that money was voluntary support. Parents are supposed to help their sons out. It's not some loan we're obligated to pay back. Lily burst out, voice cracking with desperation, clinging to the age-old excuse she'd hidden behind for years. Voluntary support does not mean unlimited, one-sided exploitation with zero gratitude or reciprocity. I leaned forward slightly, my gaze locking directly onto Lily to cut through her deflection. We never asked you to pay back a single cent until you marched down to Sonia with a fake lawyer to demand half our retirement savings. Our only simple request for 9 straight years was one single New Year's Eve dinner together, and you turned us away every time, inventing endless excuses to prioritize your birth family over your husband's aging parents. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a folder of Lily's old unblocked social media screenshots, holding the screen up for them both to view clearly. Here's your travel feed from the past 9 holiday seasons. Lunar New Year, Labor Day, National Day, every major break you take your entire family on expensive trips with your parents, posting glowing group photos to your social media page while we sit at home with a 4-place dinner table waiting for you. You never once invited us to join those trips, never offered to split holiday time evenly between both sides of the family. Zhou Hao flinched hard at the sight of the photos, his shoulders shaking faintly. For the first time all morning, genuine remorse flickered across his face, not just panic over lost money. He opened his mouth to speak, but Lily cut him off before he could utter a word of apology, determined to keep pushing her narrative of unfair treatment. Lily swatted Zhou Hao's arm sharply, stepping forward to glare at me, her tone rising into a shrill yell. Even if we took some financial help, you had no right to sell the old apartment for 260,000 yuan at a loss. That property's market value is easily 3 million. You sold it cheap just to spite us. And half that house belongs to me by marriage. You can't legally sell it without my written consent. The blatant lie hung thick in the air, and a cold surge of anger rushed through me, though I kept my outward demeanor composed. I reached into the side pocket of my suitcase, pulling out a printed copy of the original house deed, sliding it across the table to rest directly in front of Li and Wang Wei. Read the names printed on the title deed carefully. This property was a work unit welfare housing allocated exclusively to your father-in-law and me 32 years ago, long before you married Zhou Hao. Your name never appears anywhere on this document, not a single addendum, not a joint ownership rider. You hold zero legal claim to this residence, zero rights to its sale proceeds. Wang Wei glanced over the deed, his face draining of the last shreds of confidence, knowing he could not back up Li's false ownership claim with any legal statute. He avoided eye contact entirely, staring at the floor tiles like they held all the answers he couldn't fabricate. Lily refused to back down, doubling down on her empty threat of litigation. Fine, if the house isn't mine, then we'll sue you for all the financial support you withheld from our family. We'll fight this in court until we get the money we're owed. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh, reaching for the sealed manila folder I'd hidden beside the sofa this entire time, the unopened paperwork holding my secret inherited assets, our chapter's second major reversal. I tapped the folder lightly with one finger, letting the tension build before revealing its contents. Before you threaten to drag us to court, you should understand what we hold in reserve to counter any lawsuit you file. This folder contains full legal documentation for a secondary apartment inherited solely from my late mother, deed registered only under my individual name, separate from our joint marital assets. It also holds records of independent personal savings we've accumulated over 40 years, untouched by any of the funds we gave to your household. I paused, letting the gravity sink into all 3 of them, every word landing heavy. The combined value of that inherited property and separate personal savings far outweighs the 260,000 yuan from the old house sale. If you choose to file suit demanding a cut of our retirement funds, we will immediately countersue to recover the full 1,246,000 yuan in unpaid loans and documented household support we extended to you and Lily's brother, complete with every bank transfer, signed loan note, and witness statement as evidence. Wang Wei's shoulders sagged completely, realizing there was no legal loophole he could invent to protect his cousin's demands. He knew full well a judge would side with us, given the complete paper trail of debt we held against Zhou Hao and Lily's household. Lily's legs buckled slightly beneath her, and she stumbled back into the sofa seat beside Zhou Hao, her earlier fire completely extinguished, replaced by raw, unmasked fear. All her calculated manipulation, every false accusation, every legal bluff crumbled in an instant against our fully documented evidence and undisclosed secondary assets. The room fell silent for a full minute, only the distant crash of ocean waves filtering through the thin hotel window breaking the quiet. Zhou Hao stared at the ledger spread open on the table, his face a tangled mess of shame, guilt, and lingering entitlement. I waited for him to speak, hoping for a single genuine apology for 9 years of lonely holiday dinners, a single acknowledgement of how much he'd hurt his father and me. When he finally lifted his head to meet my gaze, his words shattered the last fragile thread of maternal hope I'd clung to for decades. Mom, we know we owe you a lot, but we're still your son. That sale money should still be split with me. It's only fair. That single sentence drained every last ounce of softness left in my heart for him. I'd laid out every sacrifice, every broken promise, every unpaid debt, exposed their fake lawyer's fraud, revealed our hidden inherited assets, and he still prioritized chasing our retirement cash over apologizing for nearly a decade of neglect. My emotional shift was instantaneous and irreversible. The loving mother who'd waited 9 New Year's Eves vanished entirely, replaced by a woman determined to protect her and Janya's peaceful remaining years. Lily perked back up at Zhou Hao's statement, regaining a sliver of her former aggression, grabbing his arm tightly to reinforce his demand. Exactly. We're drowning in debt because my brother's business failed. We can barely cover rent and Tongdong's school fees. You too have extra property and savings hidden away. You can afford to hand us half the house money without struggling. I stood upright from the sofa, gesturing firmly toward the hotel room door, my tone final, no room for further negotiation or debate. Your financial hardships are a direct result of your own reckless choices, overextending your household to prop up Lily's brother's failing business, consistently choosing her family over your birth parents for 9 years running. We will not sacrifice our retirement piece to clean up the messes you created yourselves. If you refuse to leave this room within the next 5 minutes, we will call hotel security and we will move forward with filing formal debt recovery proceedings against your household immediately. Zhou Hao opened his mouth to argue again, but Janya stood beside me for the first time in the confrontation, his voice deep and unyielding, cutting off any further protest. Your mother and I have bent over backward for your family for nearly a decade. We've given you cash, housing support, childcare, and endless forgiveness for every missed holiday. Today you've shown us you will never value our feelings over your own financial gain. It's time for you to go. Wang Wei didn't wait another second, grabbing his empty folder and rushing toward the door, desperate to escape the humiliating scene before he could be held accountable for impersonating a licensed attorney. Lily burst into loud, theatrical sobs, clinging to Zhou Hao's arm as he dragged her toward the exit, their heads hung low in total defeat. The hotel room door slammed shut hard enough to rattle the window frames, leaving Janya and me alone amid the scattered stack of ledgers, deeds, and printed evidence spread across the coffee table. All the tension that had filled the room for the past 2 hours rushed out in one heavy exhale from both of us. Janya wrapped his arms around my shoulders, and silent tears slipped down my cheeks, not out of grief over losing my son, but relief that the 9-year cycle of unrequited sacrifice and manipulation had finally been broken. We tidied all the documents back into our suitcase, folding the leather ledger closed and tucking the inherited property file deep at the bottom, no longer needing to wield them as leverage. For the first time since selling the old house, there was no lingering doubt hanging over our decision. The chapter's hidden third major plot twist loomed just over the horizon. Lily's mother would call my phone within 3 days, attempting to beg and manipulate me into handing over sale funds by spinning tragic stories of her son's crushing debts and their collapsing household. Worse still, Zhou Hao would eventually be forced to sell his own marital apartment to clear his brother-in-law's outstanding loans, a bitter consequence of the greed and selfishness they'd brought to our hotel room showdown. As we walked down to the hotel beach that evening to watch the sunset paint the ocean gold, I slipped my hand into Janya's, watching waves roll steadily onto the shore without pause. We'd escaped the cage of endless waiting and sacrifice, but I knew the fallout from our hotel room confrontation was far from finished. Lily's entire maternal family would pull every manipulative trick they had left to try and pry our retirement savings from us, and Zhou Hao's regret would only surface once he lost every asset he'd taken for granted his whole adult life.